Hello, and welcome to the second lecture on research methods. So last lecture we looked at the steps of the scientific method, and we also talked about what theories are and what hypotheses are, and how they are different. So let's get going with the scientific method, and I have a research study that we're going to go through to explore these steps with. So research studies often evolve as the result of observing behavior, actions, personal experiences, environmental influences, and other things. So for me, I'm fascinated by introversion and extroversion. One of the reasons for that, I think, is my sister tests extremely extroverted. I test extraordinarily introverted. I test in the 4th percentile. I am more introverted than 96% of the world's population. And so watching us as we were growing up and reflecting on those things, I just became very curious. And so my research, my interests were spurred by my own initial observations and the questions that I had about introversion and extroversion. So when we're ready to do, when we come up with a question that we want to poke around with, we take an existing theory and we form a hypothesis. Now, if you remember, a hypothesis is a specific prediction of what should be observed in the world if a theory is correct. So, we're going to look at a study done by Plateau et al. And their theory was that social identification influences the actions of a group's members. Now that's the theory. That's a huge theory. But there's lots of research to support this. So I, as a researcher, take that theory and I want to develop a hypothesis. So the hypothesis for this research study: would team identifying fans donate to a charity if fellow team members were soliciting donations rather than if an opposing team member was soliciting for donations? So there's the hypothesis. It's based on the theory. It's taking a little sliver of the theory, and they're going to research team identifying fans and charity to see how being part of a fan base influences behavior. Now we develop a methodology and then we can test our hypothesis. Once we have our hypothesis, we have to do a few things. We have to identify our variables or our factors. A variable is an aspect of our study that can be measured and can vary. Now, a study can have many variables. What happens in that case? If that's the situation, you select specific variables and focus on those variables only. So with research, you have to be very specific. You have to be very detailed. Now, once we've selected the variables we're going to look at, we have to give each variable an operational definition. So an operational definition defines how each variable will be measured, manipulated, or changed. And I'll go into that more in a moment. So for this study, we're going to use ducks and beaver fans. So the variables in this study is team self-identification. Easy to measure. You just ask the person, are you a duck fan or a beaver fan? Second variable, donating money. Does that subject donate money? And if so, how much money do they donate? The third variable is solicitor. Which solicitor does the subject donate money to? So the person, let's say we're collecting for the American Heart Association. but it's going to be, just normal people soliciting money as volunteers. So, is a Duck fan more likely to give to a member of their own team, or a member of the opposing team, or a solicitor who doesn't identify with any team? So, now we're going to conduct our research study. And we're going to do this at 6 different Civil War games. Now we're going to need 3 groups of researchers, research assistants, to act as solicitors for money for the American Heart Foundation Association. So we need our research assistants to look like one of the 3 groups: a Duck fan, a Beaver fan, or a neutral person, non-fan. So our Duck fans are going to wear green and yellow scarves. The minute someone who's a Beaver fan sees you in your green and yellow scarf, they know you're a Duck fan. The moment a Duck fan sees that you're wearing an orange and black scarf, they know that you're a Beaver fan. Now Group C wears a neutral scarf, and this is so we can measure, are people giving because of team identification, or are they just willing to give money because they like the American Heart Association? So does team identification have anything to do with this, with the donation of money at all? And then it's on. So we've got Duck solicitors, Beaver solicitors, and my guinea pig has gracefully agreed to have his buddies come over, and they're going to be our neutral group. So they blend in well at football games. He's a sweetheart. Now, each of the research teams solicit money at 6 football games. At 3 of those games, they solicit money before the game starts. At 3 of those, the other 3 games, they solicit money after the game ends. So this could be another variable, and this variable could just be when solicitation occurs. So every research assistant is going to solicit from really anybody. They'll just have a bucket set up, and they'll be scattered throughout the stadium, and just asking people if they want to donate to the American Heart Association. So our Duck research assistants are going to be wearing their green and yellow scarf. The Beaver research assistants are going to be wearing black and orange scarves, and the neutral researchers, our little guinea pigs, wear teeny tiny little brown scarves. Here's what was found. More fans donated to those researchers wearing their team's scarf rather than those wearing the opposing team's scarf or neutral scarf. They even walked by my guinea pigs. And fans gave more money to those researchers who belonged to their team. Because you are going to have subjects who will donate to the opposing team member. But what they found is that the majority of the time, subjects donated to solicitors who were one of them, who belonged to their team, and gave more money. They were more likely to give more money than if they had to give to a Beaver solicitor. So Ducks were more likely to give to Ducks. Beavers were more likely to give to Beavers. And neutral, Ducks and Beavers did better. It's a football game. People are very team-oriented. Poor little guinea pigs in their teeny tiny scarves. So what about the timing of the game? So solicitation happened at 3 games before the game started. And then at the other 3 games, it was after the game ended. So, opposing team researchers received more money before the game than after. So if a Duck fan, they're all set up for the game and finding their seats and buying beer and nachos and whatever else, and then they just walk across a solicitor who's a beaver soliciting money for the American Heart Association. So the Duck fan decides, okay, good cause. Doesn't really pay attention to the scarf. Interestingly, before the game, subjects who gave to opposing team solicitors gave more money than they ended up doing when solicitation happened at the end of the game. Now, something that this tells us is that the game outcome may have played a role in how much people gave. So, before the game, Ducks gave more money to beaver researchers if they were going to donate to beaver researchers. Ducks still overall gave to Ducks, but some subjects gave to anyone that was soliciting money for the American Heart Association. Beavers gave more money to duck researchers before the game. And then what happens after the game? Fans of the winning team gave more money after the game than before. And it didn't matter who solicited money from them. So let's say the Ducks win. Duck fans are going to start donating, but they end up giving larger donations after the game than what we saw with subjects when we solicited funds before a game started. Beavers win, they give larger donations after the game. Winning really fueled charitable giving. You gotta ask yourself, what's the role of beer? Because it does, disinhibit us, or be a little more reckless with our money. I'm not saying that donating to a good cause is reckless. I'm not saying that at all. But there are little confounds. So maybe beer ended up being a confound. It was a variable that was unexpected, but actually did influence our results. I'm not saying that beer was. I'm just using that as an example of a confound. Now, if the Ducks win, the Duck fans gave more money after the game. And it didn't matter who asked them for that money for the American Heart Association. If the Beavers win, they gave larger donations after the game, regardless of team affiliation of the researchers. So, in a nutshell, fans usually gave to their team or the neutral researchers before the game, and fans gave more money before the game than after, unless their team won. Then the winning fans gave more money after the game than before, regardless of who asked. So there's a study that lets us explore the variables, operational definitions, and we got to see how the stages of the scientific method are being followed. And we're going to talk about that in more detail in our next lecture as well. So, I think this is my last, no, not my last slide. So our next step is to publish our findings and then start another study. Now, we published so that other researchers can replicate our research. If you go to graduate school, one of the things you're going to find is that your research is often a replication of someone else's research. Now, replication is an excellent thing. We need replication because replication lets us know were the results of our research just a one-off? Or can we have more confidence in my actual results because other researchers are getting the same or similar results? And so replication can confirm our results and our findings are regarded with more confidence. Thank you. I'll see you in the next lecture.